Welcome to Under the Lens. Come and enjoy an extraordinary, raw, and unfiltered podcast that delivers debate, discussions, and interviews about film, pop culture, and everything in between. Here is your host, film critic and journalist, Byron Lafayette.
Greetings all. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with the authors of Unikorn, a recently released graphic novel that is soon to be a major motion picture release. Don Handfield is one of the writers and creators of Unikorn. He is the co-creator of History Channel's drama Knightfall, and he also produced The Founder, starring Michael Keaton, and Kill the Messenger, starring two-time Academy Award-nominated actor Jeremy Renner. His first comic series, The Rift, was produced by Steven Spielberg as an episode for the Apple reboot of Amazing Stories. His second series, The Mall, was optioned by Ivan Reitman of Ghostbusters for development into a TV show. He was also named one of the top new faces of independent film by Filmmaker Magazine, and has written screenplays or produced films for all of the major studios. The second writer and creator of Unikorn, Joshua Malkin, has written many projects for Sony, Warner Brothers, Cross Creek Entertainment, Universal Pictures, as well as for more than a dozen production companies, both big and small. These include an adaptation of the 80s cult franchise Beastmaster, a supernatural thriller for the Australian company Sea Films, and a reboot of the franchise Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. In 2008, his screenplay Cabin Fever 2, Spring Fever, completed production for Lionsgate. Joshua is also a professor of screenwriting at the University of California, Riverside, a story architect for the video game industry, and the proud father of twins. I really hope that you enjoy this interview with the creators of Unikorn. So anyway, you guys both have kind of like a history in filmmaking and in Hollywood and such. And so what kind of made you jump in and decide to do a graphic novel together?
Well, I jumped into comics. I was making a TV series. Actually, I just was in the process of making or finishing Knightfall, and I wanted to develop another show and just decided to do it as a comic book just because I wanted to realize it visually. And it was a great experience. I mean, it's making comics is so fun, man. As a writer, it's so pure, and there's just such a small team you're working with, and it's really from your mind to the artist and right to the consumer, which is just usually the path between your brain and the consumer is much more circuitous and laced with a lot more landmines. So I just enjoyed the process, man. And the other thing I think is I had kids, and they couldn't watch Knightfall. It was people being, blood spewing as people attacked each other. And I made The Founder, and The Founder probably would interest them in some way, but I don't think they'd be chomping at the bit to watch as little kids. So, the other thing is, when I was a kid, the great films were made by the great family films were made by the best filmmakers, Spielberg, Zemeckis, Donner. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that the Pixar movies, the animated films that are fantastical are great, but the ones that are grounded about real people just aren't treated with the same sensitivity and craftsmanship. And I think we wanted to they aren't making those films. So we were like, well, let's do a graphic novel that we can tell a story like that's grounded and emotional and has magic and something that adults can read and enjoy, and kids can read and enjoy. And I think that was kind of the impetus for us.
I also want to say, just a little off the beaten track, but I actually really love Knightfall. So I was like,
oh, thanks, man.
when I saw I was going to be talking with the writer, I was like, hey, that's exciting.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. I'm so glad you liked it.
So going on, do you feel that kind of like working, in film and such, that was able to kind of help you guys develop a graphic novel, because they're both visual mediums and just kind of the style of how you see and interpret stories is similar?
Well, I certainly think that as far as writing a movie and writing a screenplay, from a story structure and emotional and a plot structure, I mean, that's stuff that we've done for 20 some years, each of us. So that part is certainly is very similar. I think from a specific standpoint, there is a bit of a learning curve for us with comics, and just sort of how the pages are laid out and how you deliver the reveals. You have an odd page you want to turn, you don't want to reveal something where they're going to flip and see the reveal before they read this page. And I think just from a standpoint of how to the process of creating the story, but so there definitely was some having to learn a new process. But Josh, you might have some other insights on that too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, they are, at the end of the day, you are guiding and channeling imagery to tell a story, which is, at least on the surface of things, not that different. We were also really lucky to have an extraordinary artist who I think, could kind of bridge whatever learning curve or deficiencies we came to the process with. But yeah, I think, having worked in a visual medium for most of our lives did make the transition to graphic novels significantly easier.
One thing that I really liked about this graphic novel was that it dealt with grief, and the different like stages of grief and such. And you don't see that a lot when when you're looking at like adult novels or graphic novels or comic books. And so, what made you guys decide to go in that direction?
Well, we both had experienced loss in our family. It's like we had this idea to do this movie or about, we had the plot idea. And again, with anything I do, it's always got to have two purposes. One is to tell a great story, but one to have sort of some kind of emotional meaning or payoff. And my kids lost two grandparents in the space of like 6 months. And I lost two parents, and Josh had the same experience on his end. And we kind of now not only had to deal with our own grief, but we had to explain it to young kids. And there's no manual. I mean, there are manuals, I'm sure, but they're just, dealing with it is challenging. And we wanted to kind of create something that could do it in a way that was, lighter than, without wallowing in the grief, giving them a way to sort of understand and accept it. And I think that was kind of our purpose.
Yeah, I thought you guys did a great job, because I definitely, when I was reading it, I definitely felt like the pulling at the heartstrings, in certain frames and certain panels. So you guys did a good job.
Cool. Okay, great.
Now there was, kind of mentioned throughout the story and, in different summaries and stuff, they said that hope, faith, and magic were, a big part of the narrative. And it kind of feels like in today's society, especially with young people, that there's kind of like a hopelessness, that pervades, and you see that with psychological reports and everything. Mm-hmm. And, do you hope that this story sends a message and kind of helps out people who are reading it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Don and I have collaborated a handful of times, and it's a kind of recurring theme that keeps creeping back into the work, is that, we're losing touch with our sort of more magical selves, the parts of ourselves that believe in the inexplicable and the incredible and the sublime. And I definitely see it in my kids, who are strangely, only 6 and are already like, unicorns aren't real, they're fake. And, trying to sort of resurrect that sense that I thought was so central to all of the stuff I loved as a kid, which is that, magic could literally be in your backyard if you know how to look for it, if you know where to look for it, was incredibly important. That sense that like the world is so much more special than we often give it credit for, seemed to be kind of a thematic balance to the past couple of years have been hard, obviously. And,
it's true.
and parting some of the clouds and turning up the volume on the sun seemed to be the move. So, yes, definitely hoped it would be additive.
No, that is true, because I remember when I was young, reading like Chronicles of Narnia or whatever, stuff that you kind of had that feeling like, oh, this could, you felt like as a kid, oh, this could happen. You weren't reading it thinking like, oh, this is so fake or anything like that, Yeah, so that's very true. Yeah.
That's what made him so special, man. You could go into maybe I could go into my wardrobe and go in the back and be in my, I mean, that's cool. And that's, I think, part of to go back to our impetus for this. It's like the Pixar movies are phenomenal. I mean, as a parent, you watch them and they're so great. They're just not, but they're not taking people, they're necessarily real people on our planet that are going to experience things. They're always a bit of removal because it's animated. And I think we really wanted to create something that, while it's essentially a cartoon drawing, it actually feels real. It's a guy who works as an auto mechanic and who in a rural town, and magic can appear there too. It's not just on fantasy worlds or in dungeons and stuff like that. It could be in your backyard. So
That actually kind of goes into a little bit more of like what my next question was going to be, that, part of the reason I liked the story as well was that it took a fantastical idea, that you normally only see in fantasy stories, but it kind of put it into this, gritty real world environment. And that was something I really liked. And so I wanted to ask, like, if you could go into a little bit of the creative process of the characters, of how you created the story and how you decided, what you were going to do with this concept that's found in fairy tales and suddenly is, like you said, in the world of an auto mechanic.
Well, I grew up on the East Coast, and my family is all very working class, like farmers and mechanics and that stuff. And when I got the first inkling for this, I was visiting my mom in rural Pennsylvania, where she now lives. And I was visiting my mom in rural Pennsylvania, where she now lives. And there was a farm. There were a lot of farms there, and there's an old woman who had a farm with like a couple llamas and a peacock and just a weird assortment of animals, like a bunch of dogs and an old horse with a fly bonnet on its head. And I just thought, like, what if that horse was a unicorn? What if that peacock was a phoenix? What if, and I had kids at the time, so I'm probably weaving stories for them, but it just kind of, it just felt magical. There was something magical about it. And I love rural America. I love small towns. I very much have like a working class ethos. And I think, I always like to, even with Knightfall, I like to try to come in with at least one character on the street level, on the sort of normal human level. I think that's the level I most relate to. I don't relate to rich people, the Kardashians. I didn't grow up that way. I was a latchkey kid raised by a single mom. So I wanted to kind of create wonder in a way that was relatable, I think, to most of the world.
No, that is so true, because where I grew up, there was, it was more city, like Inland Empire of California. But there was like a lady who had like this, she called it Ham and Eggs Ranch, and she raised like chickens, pigs, and everything. Mm-hmm. And we'd buy rabbits from her and stuff for pets. But it was like, so, like you said, magical, going on. Here's this giant pot-bellied pig running across the front lawn, and stuff. So
cool.
It's like, so I definitely can understand when you say that, Now, when you were going about, writing this and then working with the artists and such, what is that relationship like when you're working with an artist to have them, kind of bring life to your story? And like, how involved were you guys in deciding what aspects of the art was going to show?
Josh, you want to take it, or you want me to?
Sure. I mean, the artist is phenomenal, as I mentioned, and an extraordinary force, additive force in bringing this together. But the truth is extremely involved. Like, it really was a team effort and a collaboration. I think he brought a lot to the table, but it was a source of relatively constant back and forth, from, designing what everything looked like to making sure that there was a sort of an arc to the design that sort of echoed and mimicked the emotional flow of the story. I mean, all of that stuff was discussed. I hesitate to say it, but to death. It's a 100 some odd page or 200 some odd page graphic novel, almost 200 page graphic novel, and the script for it was 5 times as long because it's so full of notes and ideas and whatabouts and wouldn't it be cool ifs, and I mean, we did not leave many stones unturned in that creative process.
I had worked with the artist on a series I did called The Mall. He's a very talented man. His name's Rafael Loureiro, and he was an architect who wanted to get into comics. And I had seen like a 5-page sample he had done that I just thought was incredible. And we James Hake, who's the president of Scout, and I were doing a book together, and it was The Mall, and he did that series for us. It was a 6-issue series. I wanted to work with him again because I just loved his style and loved working with him. And we approached him on Unikorn, and he's Brazilian, so rural America is very specific, and so we just got him a lot of references. I had actually taken pictures of the farm that I had seen where I thought was magical because I thought it was interesting then, and we'd send a lot of references. Firefighter outfits look different in Brazil, stuff like that we'd have to like send references to show him. And some stuff he would do a little different that we were like, that's actually kind of cool, that it doesn't look like what we're used to. It's got a little different flair to it. And he's got a different eye, and like how the horses, the tack on the horses is different, than it would be in America, which I thought was kind of cool. It's like, it's not your typical tack because it's a unicorn, and maybe it came from Brazil, maybe whatever. So we kind of embraced the differences in some places and just tried to find references for other places. But he's a great artist. We love him, and we wouldn't have been able to do this book without him. And we just love his style. So
yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed just the little differences that he put in there, like the horn, and stuff, being like kind of rough and jagged, that it wasn't always like the the spiral ones that we always see. So it was cool.
That was part of our process. I think with the horns particularly, we were like, well, why would the horn always look the same? And we wanted to kind of do something that looked different. And I always thought that like we had this sort of part of it. It's not really in the book, but we thought that like when you the horns grow, how many sprigs it has is how many times it's sort of been dehorned. We thought that like, how many times has it been, but we wanted it to look different. And also we had to figure out where to hide this thing, and then we didn't want to make it I think it was an umbrella for a while, but we finally were like, when we figured out the whole, because there's plot and there's emotion, and we really wanted to make the location of the horn not just a plot point, but an emotional point. So when we had the moment with the tree, it's like, okay, well, it's got to kind of look like a tree branch, which kind of is interesting to us anyway, that it's not like a typical, it's almost more organic, feels more real. And we wanted to kind of expand the mythology of unicorns. They all have different horns, they're different colors, they're different shapes, and that was part of the fun.
Well, since you guys both were writing this story together, one thing I wanted to inquire about was what is the process like when there's two of you working on the story? Like how does that work with you deciding who writes what, or how, I've always been curious about that when I see books with two authors.
Well, we usually outline everything together, like pretty thoroughly. Like we'll go through a Scrivener. We have a program called Scrivener that I can't say enough good things about. It's sort of changed my life as a writer. We basically outline the entire story in Scrivener. Like we know the whole outline, and then we'll kind of piece out so we've outlined it, and then we'll be like, hey, we kind of have like a draft pick, like the NFL draft. And we'll be like, and I pick my favorite scene, then he picks his favorite scene, and we kind of go down the road and we mark what we're going to write. And then we each take a pass, and then we send them to each other. And sometimes, we want to be like, nah, it doesn't work, and rewrite it. Sometimes it's just a little changes. And then sometimes we write together. Sometimes we'll just go through and pick the scenes apart together. Because look, I love to collaborate. I've written alone, I've written with people, and Josh is a dear friend of mine, and I enjoy his presence, and writing's a lonely business. So I'd much rather write with a friend. And it also helps because if you're writing alone, your bad ideas, you need 3 weeks away from a bad idea to see, if you're writing with someone, they just kind of tell you that sucks, and you can save yourself 3 weeks of yeah.
So, I heard and saw, that this graphic novel is going to be made into a feature film soon. So one, congratulations. That's awesome news.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, we partnered with a company called Armory Films. They made a movie called Mudbound that was nominated for a couple Golden Globes, and they made a movie called Peanut Butter Falcon.
Oh, I remember that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which of that year was one of my favorite movies of the year. And I had been working with him in other aspects. We had done, they wanted, I think I pitched them something. I can't remember the exact thing of it, but they were like, what are you working on? And I told him about this, I'm writing something about unicorns. And of course, everyone looks at you like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, what's wrong with you? And it's funny because I gave them the script for it, and they saw it, they understood it. They were like, wow, they got it. And one of the principals, Chris Lamole, has 5 boys. Bless his soul. I don't know how he survives on a daily basis, but his 5 boys, who are just the boyiest boys you'll ever see. I mean, they're just constantly wrestling and fighting and just the cutest kids. They enjoyed the story as much as a little girl would. So that told us that we were sort of onto something. And, we're both, Josh and I are both big comic nerds, and I go to Comic Cons all the time, and I have kids. So you're constantly looking for stuff to get them. And it was always for my son. It was like, there's Deadpool stuff, there's Wolverine stuff. There's a million things I could get him. And for my daughter, it was always harder. And that was part of one of the things we wanted to do this, was to have something for them. And obviously the movie thing is what I said. It's wanting to do a live action movie that's like, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the Black Stallion, or these movies that are just so cinematic and beautiful and grounded, and do something like that the whole family could enjoy. So very excited about it.
That is, yeah. Because I would imagine, that seeing something that, that you created coming to life on a screen would be kind of surreal, I would guess.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, my first comic got made into an episode of Amazing Stories by Steven Spielberg. And that was crazy because it has like a World War II airplane in it. And I got to sit in the World War II airplane when it was there. It's pretty amazing. And you see like they're building the sets, and sometimes they're inspired by the comic book, which I thought was interesting, where, but yeah, it's a wonderful experience. I mean, it is great. And, and as a writer, it's actually, sometimes you can be precious with what you write. And I think when you do a comic first, I think you're less precious than I would be if it was a screenplay, because as a screenplay, it's a blueprint. Like, you want the house built how you did the blueprint. With a comic, it's already an end product. So if they change the story after that, you've already done it your way. So let someone do it their way. It's a little more freeing that way. So
it's very true. I never thought of it that way, but that is true. You've seen your vision all the way through to the end. So
it'll never be that pure either. It'll never be, because you can blow up San Francisco for the same price as have two people talk, essentially. So it's nice.
That's true. When it comes to, this product, it's went out for sale, and it's available to the masses now. Is there one or two things that you would really hope that a reader would take out of this graphic novel?
Oh, wow, what a great question. Yeah, I mean, the thing that for me is, it's hard to say this as earnestly as I feel it, is, it is a story about familial love, and the sense that, like, the love that transpires between family members never dies. It never doesn't necessarily fade. It doesn't tarnish. And having had that been such a tremendous cornerstone of where the project began, it would be wonderful if that was the relationship that people uncovered with these characters and with the story's theme, is that, like, the bond between this girl and this horse, the love between this father and this little girl, is more than anything else really the glue of the story. And I'd love for that to land with everyone who reads it, ideally.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's like, if it can, not only provide entertainment, but, I want kids to look around and see the magic in the world where it might not normally be, like in a gas station in rural Pennsylvania, or in a rundown horse farm in the middle of nowhere. I think, magic isn't just on the top of castles, it can be in your backyard. So I think that's what I want them to take away.
Well, I saw, as I got to the end, going onto the last page and such, I saw that the story seems to be far from over. There was, teases of a larger world, teases of more eviler, I guess you could say, villains, that are out there and after them. So, are you guys planning on a part 2, or have you already started working on a part 2, or what can you reveal about that?
We've always planned a part 2, and we are in the works on that. Yeah. So we are hoping to have that out 2023.
So, well, that's very exciting. So I will be first in line to read that. So
cool, man. Thank you.
So, and kind of as like an epilogue question, I should say, that kind of leads away. I got to ask you guys, do you guys have a favorite graphic novel personally?
Go ahead.
Last Man is mine.
Man, I've read so many good ones, man. I mean, gosh, I'd probably say Death of Captain Marvel, man. When I was a kid, that was the one for me. I just thought it was so cool they could do a movie. I mean, a book, a story about, like, death and cancer and grieving with, it's just, I don't know. That one stood out to me when I was a kid. I've read some great books I thought Green River was really nice. It's about a guy whose dad worked on tracking down the Green River killer. And it really was just kind of a love letter from a dad to a son. Watchmen, of course, is a classic. It's hard to just pick one, but but yeah, and I think White Ash, one of the graphic novels that's published by Scout, a company I'm involved with, I think is really great too.
Those are all great picks. Yeah. Well, like I said, I appreciate you guys taking the time to chat with me. And can you guys let the listeners and readers know like where they can pick up Unikorn and where they can follow you guys and see what you guys are up to?
Sure. Yeah. Unikorn's available. It's at Barnes and Noble. It's at Amazon. It's distributed by Simon & Schuster in the book world. So it should be available at most retailers. You can also grab it at scoutcomics.com. That's a good place to pick it up. Me personally, there's a Unikorn Facebook page. There's a Unikorn Instagram. My Instagram, which I'm trying to get better at social media. So if you want, is at Donnie Inc. DONNYINK. I'm not the greatest at posting there, but I do like to have a place to be able to let people know what's going on. So
yeah, and I'd say the same. A simple entry of my name in any social media platform will yield evidence of accounts that are not tended very regularly. But we're going to get better.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Like,
yeah.
Man.
Well, I mean, also, what are people posting in the past 2 years? I mean, it's like, here's there's another shot of me at my desk.
Yeah. Yeah. There's only so many food posts and desk posts, like you said,
Exactly.
You'd think, Brian, you'd think there'd be only so many.
It's true, man.
Oh,
well, again, I appreciate you guys taking the time, and congratulations on a great work of fiction. I really enjoyed it a lot.
So glad you liked it, man. And we're so grateful for you doing this, man. Thanks for taking the time.